So it is absolutely Baltic. I think we reached -3 or -4 last night. So I'm out filming on the bank today, and I felt like if we would have gone to a commercial, it would have been very, very difficult to catch many fish. What tends to happen, the fish just ball up in an area of the lake and they don't feed until after match hours, like 3:30, 4 o'clock, they will have a little feed. So catching them through the day will be very, very difficult. So we've come somewhere a little bit different. We've come to the Hampshire Avon at Salisbury today. Now I know this stretch of river can be absolutely brilliant when it goes cold. There's absolutely loads of fish. We've got loads of choice of pegs. There's shallow pegs, deeper pegs. So hopefully if I can pick my peg very carefully, introduce my bait in the right way, I've got a load of ground bait mixed up, I've got a load of maggots, hemp and casters, we can have a great day. There's loads of roach to be caught, dace and chub. So if I pick my peg right, feed my bait right, we can have a great day. So I'm just having a little walk along the stretch and we've got a number of pegs to choose from. Now, there's a few things you need to remember when choosing your peg on a river like this. It's very low and clear, so straight away if you can see the bottom, that's a big no-no. If you look out into the peg and sort of like these pegs here, you can see the bottom virtually in the middle. Now realistically, when you start fishing on pegs like that, you might catch a few fish and then they'll just disappear. So what I'm going to be looking for today is pegs where it runs from like a shallow area down into a slightly deeper area, then shallower again. And you can imagine what the fish will do. They will just ball up into that deeper water where they're not easily seen. I think what they do, they try and sit in pegs like that to avoid predators. I mean, on rivers like this, you'll have pike, you'll have cormorants, stuff like that. So they will feel safer around trees and in slightly deeper water. So yeah, when you're out on a river like this, try and pick a slightly deeper peg when it's this cold and when it's this low and clear. And I can assure you that will get you a few extra bites. So I think I found my peg. It looks absolutely stunning. What we've got a big shallow area here, then it drops off into a big deeper area here. You can only see the bottom very close in, and you've got all of that cover from that great big tree in the water. Now if I was a fish, this is where I would live. It looks absolutely stunning. So what I'm going to do, I've got a couple of choices. I can sit a little bit further downstream and sit lower to the water, or I can sit up a bit higher on the bank here. Sitting higher does give you an advantage because you can keep your line off the water when fishing with a stick float, but it is nice sitting a bit lower to the water for netting fish. So I've got the choice of here or here. I'm going to throw my ground bait and loose feed my bait slightly downstream towards that tree, which will give me better presentation on my float. And I think this is going to be an incredible day. So we're sat on peg 26 and it looks absolutely delightful. We really couldn't have picked a better day for it. My approach for today is going to be ultra simple. I've literally set up one stick float rod. I'm going to throw some ground bait in initially. I've put some ground bait together. I've got some hemp and some casters in it. I'm just going to throw 5 or 6 balls of ground bait a long way downstream. By feeding your bait downstream, it really makes presentation a lot better. You can get your float settled and you can get your line in the right position before it reaches your bait, which is really important. I've also got some maggots, which I can loose feed a bit over the top. I can also put maggots on the hook. But that's going to be my very, very simple approach. So I'm going to start my day. Got my balls of ground bait. I'm going to make them up really quite hard because it's quite pacey through this bit here. So here we go. That's perfect, that. I just want to throw it a little bit closer to me. Perfect. And then right on that line, that looks absolutely spot on to me. Perfect, again. Should have been a cricketer. That's spot on now. So, feeding at that distance downstream, I can cast my float in about 5 to 6 metres above it, get it all settled, get it all running through nicely, and then I can catch fish above my bait and below it. But that's how I've started my day. I'll let you know how it's going in a minute. Well, that didn't take long. Just shows the power of ground bait on these rivers. Literally, that was my second run through. I got my float down nice and presented, and yeah, literally just got, I reckon that was just a bit above my bait where it's sitting on the bottom, and we're in straight away. It feels like a decent fish as well. Look at that. Oh, look at that, amazing. A nice big red fin to start the day. That just shows how important putting your bait in right and picking your peg is. Look at that. That is an absolutely stunning fish. Just immaculate fish. Can't believe we've caught that quickly, to be honest, second run through. But yeah, great start to the day. Right, so I'll talk you through the setup. Couldn't get much simpler really. I'll start from the very bottom. We've got a Matrix X5 B hook on in a size 16. And I love these hooks when I'm fishing for maggots because the gape of the hook is really wide. You don't want a narrow gape hook when you're fishing with maggots. So when the fish suck the bait in, they can't spit it back out without a hook in themselves. Then the hook length itself is 10 inches long. That's 012 soft steel. The main line I'm using today is 016 power micron. Now traditionally this is just a line that you would normally use for like pole rigs, but I was sat in the garage last night thinking about what line to use, and I couldn't think of anything better than power micron. Really durable, obviously floats, and to be honest it's been beautiful. Now the actual shotting of the stick float that I'm using is really simple. Top of the two loops we've got a number 8. Then about 25 centimetres up from that, we've got another number 8. So just two number 8 droppers. And then we've got a bulk. We've got a 1.5 gram Olivet with a number 8 either side. You just can't get any more simple than that. No tangles. I think if you start complicating it, using maybe tapered bulks and stuff like that, and using shot instead of Olivets, it might just get a little bit easier to tangle. The float itself is a Preston stick float, which has worked absolutely beautiful. It was an 8 number 4, which is about a 2 gram. For a peg with this width, where you don't actually have to cast very far, it's absolutely perfect. Wire stem with a hollow bristle. So the hollow bristle gives it a little bit of buoyancy so it doesn't drag under if your maggots are just creeping along the bottom, and that wire stem makes the float very stable. Also, it's quite a slim body on the stick float itself, so if you do miss bites you can just literally pick the float up out of the water, drop it back in and carry on for another bite. The rod itself is probably the best component of the whole setup. It's the first time I've ever actually used a Horizon X Ultra Pro 13 foot in X Light, and it is absolutely stunning for all this style of fishing, but really versatile at the same time. So if I was going to go out and fish a slider, this is the rod I would use. If I was going to go and use a stick float today, this is the rod I use. But if I was going to go on a commercial and fish for skimmers on just a conventional waggler, I'd also use this. So it's got so many different uses. Absolutely brilliant rod. I can't stress how good this is. And then my old trusty Matrix Horizon HX Pro 3000 reel. It's just lovely for this style of fishing. Plenty of power to drag the fish up through the peg, up through the flow. But yeah, nice, really simple. It took me about 20 seconds to put it all together. I chucked my ground bait in, second chuck, caught a lovely roach. So the setup can't be wrong if you're catching that quickly. But yeah, just a nice balanced setup, and it's working really well. So obviously I've just fed my ground bait, but I'm going to start loose feeding a bit of bait. But I'm going to mix some hemp and casters together and loose feed it. Instead of feeding once with casters, once with hemp, I'm just going to get another pot, mix it together and then feed it in one go. So I had an amazing start, literally threw my ground bait in, caught that big roach, then I caught a smaller roach. I've missed a couple of bites, but the last couple of chucks I haven't had any indications, but I've started loose feeding. But we've had such a great start catching that big roach early. It's making me think they want ground bait. Oh, hello, here we go. That was above my bait that time. Incredible fish. I literally just picked my catapult up to fire some bait in, and I looked back round and my float was under. Look at that. What's that this time? Oh, it's a dace this time. Wow. This is the best fishing. That the position where I got that bite in my peg is a real good indication that the fish are feeding, because I'm feeding my bait like there where I've been loose feeding, and the fish, I had my bite literally right up in my feed. So it shows the fish are coming upstream and looking for the bait. If you're catching your fish miles below your bait, a lot of the time you're catching fish that are just in your peg that aren't really feeding. But I just feel like when you're catching them that high in your peg, they're really coming upstream looking for the bait that you're feeding. Starting to find a little bit of rhythm now, and getting my feeding right, getting the position where I put my float right, getting the line and direction right. So I'm just popping my float fairly upstream, straightening it all out so the line's in the right position. I'm loose feeding about there, which is in line with that tree, and then I'm just trying to ease the float through the peg. If the line needs to be mended, I'll just mend it, and then try and get that float going through the peg as smooth as possible. And oh, just bumped one then. But yeah, that was the perfect situation to get yourself in. So the line, it was all straight behind the float. The float's going through the peg smoothly. You've loose fed and then the float goes under. You couldn't get it any more perfect than that, really. And if I can just keep adjusting where I'm feeding, where I'm putting my float, and try and get the rhythm as such as best I can, I'm sure we're going to put a weight of fish together today. You can be looking at like 20 pound, but it just depends on how long they keep coming. I would have thought at some point we'll have to introduce some ground bait again. But when I feed my ground bait the second time, what I will do, I'll feed it a little bit closer to this bank. Now that I'm fishing and now that I've had a few bites, I felt like where I fed my ground bait was a little bit too far across. Where I fed my ground bait, it was a bit boily. A little bit closer to myself here is a bit smoother, but that's only something you can see once you start fishing. I probably should have ran my float through a few more times before we start fishing, but I was excited to get going. But next time I feed some ground bait, I'm just going to feed it on like a similar line that I'm loose feeding on, and hopefully that should improve things a little bit more. So I feel like I want a little bit more ground bait in my peg. The biggest fish I caught were literally straight away after throwing my ground bait in. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to put such big balls in this time. I'm just going to make up like 5 like single hand size balls, like not double hand size. And I'm just going to throw them similar position downstream, but I'm just going to throw them a little bit closer to this bank and just see what effect that has. I reckon I might start hooking an odd big roach again, because I feel like on that loose feed the fish have gone just a little bit small. So I've done the same again. I've just put hempen casters in the balls and I'm just going to throw them. That sort of distance from the bank, and then that allow me plenty of time to get my float down, get it all settled before I reach the point where my ground bait is, and I might get an odd bite above it as well. So that looks a nicer position where I've just chucked that ground bait. I'm going to carry on loose feeding because I'm sure that's bringing some fish into my peg, but I'm happier now with where that ground bait is. Oh, there he is. Oh no, it had it. Massive pike. just come up and nailed me dace. Right, so we had a bit of a lull after a brilliant start. Obviously caught some nice roach and dace really quickly after introducing that ground bait, but then it went all a little bit funny. But I have had 2 or 3 real big fish topping my peg. One over there and a couple right down the end of my peg. It could have been the same fish. It might be a pike or a trout, and it's gone a little bit funny. But about 5 minutes ago, I just shallowed up just a touch and started running a little bit further down my peg. I felt like the fish might have just dropped out of my peg a touch. And then I've caught 2 real nice dace after doing that. So hopefully, if I can search my peg a little bit more at this new depth, I can keep an odd bite coming, and then when it gets to the time of like the real good time of day, i.e. like 3 o'clock onwards, hopefully we'll have another real good run and put a nice weight together. The fish are like a really nice stamp that I've caught today. When I have caught a roach or a dace, it's been 4 to 8 ounces, which is a really, really good stamp. Hopefully, as the light just starts to drop behind the trees and we start to lose a little bit of light, we might even catch a few odd bigger ones. Right, so we're getting on to just after 3 now, and the fishing's so steady. I feel like those fish have really responded to when I've started loose feeding maggots. Obviously I was loose feeding hempen casters before, and it was good, to be fair, and then I've swapped to maggots and it's kick-started everything again. Just trying to get my float to go through the peg as smoothly as possible and just run on the edge of that green bush that's hanging in the water, because every time I can get my float going in the right direction and running through nice and smoothly, and get to that point just before that bush there, I seem to get a bite. It's mainly roach now as well that I'm catching. Caught quite a few dace, but I feel like now that light's starting to drop just a touch and those roach are going to have a munch now. The only thing I'm contemplating is maybe putting a little bit more ground bait in, but I feel like it's a little bit risky, because the last 2 times I've done it, I've not had such a good response as when the first initial time I've done it. And to be honest, I'm getting quite a few bites now, so I'll probably just stick with the loose feeding, and then if it goes a bit funny again, then I might put some ground bait in. Right, so the fish seem to be getting bigger and bigger. Oh, look at that one, nearly got took by a pike, that one. But they are absolutely beautiful fish. It's just incredible fishing like this. We are having a few problems with those pike. Basically, everyone I hook now is getting chased by pike, but we are getting to that time of day where they will start to feed. But it's amazing fishing. Right, so we're getting on now. I think it's about 3:45. That light's really starting to drop, and that is exactly when fish like this start to feed. I'm basically now rationing my bait because I'm starting to run out. My maggots, just blasting maggots like just down from me, trotting it down towards that bush, and I'm getting a bite virtually every chuck now. Absolutely stunning day, to be honest. So the process that we're doing now, I'm literally putting on double red maggot, hooking them through the tail, so there's loads of point of the hook showing. I'm sort of casting now like that sort of direction, dragging it back towards me, straightening the rig all out, holding the rod, firing in my maggot sort of about 1 o'clock, lifting that line up, trying to get that float to go through as smooth as possible, and then really can control that float. And one thing I have been doing is just before it gets to the point where I think I'm going to get a bite, I'll just hold on to the float, try and lift that hook bait up a touch and let it fall just to the point where I've been getting bites. And that seems to have worked absolutely brilliant. So I'm just getting to that tree now. I'll just hold on to it. Hold on, hold on. You can just imagine that hook lifting up and then let it go again. And then it's just running down right on the edge of that tree. If I don't get a bite for that chuck, I'd never get one. Come on, come on. No, no bite. That is mental. That was absolutely perfect, that chuck. Got to get one there, surely. Oh, it did go under. I think it might have been dragging that. But yeah, that seems to be the best way of fishing this peg so far. A little bit of ground bait at the start. And then chuck it in like that, drag it back towards you, straighten all the rig out, make sure it's sinking nice. Loose feed some maggots, get that float going right down within the loose feed, and just try and get that float going through as smooth as possible. Oh yes, right up in my bait, that one. Oh, that feels a bit bigger. Right up in my bait, literally. I've been moving it like 2 meters. God, they're starting to feed now, these roach. Look at that. Mint, I love it. Definitely coming back here. So that one can't be in the loose feed because it's literally 2 meters from where the loose feed's landing on the water. So I reckon that one is feeding on the ground bait still. And then I'm getting an odd bite there on top of my ground bait, and then the fish I'm catching down the end of my peg, I think they're the ones that are responding to loose feed. So I'm going to make this last chuck. I've literally got about 20 maggots left and I can't really see a thing, but normally when that's the situation you're in, you've had a good day. And I have absolutely loved today. It's been brilliant. Like, to come out when the weather was gone down to -3 last night, come to like a natural venue like this where it's gin clear, and to catch as many roach and dace as what we have is absolutely brilliant. Like, I've absolutely loved it. The peg is perfect. We've got a bit of depth, plenty of flow, and we've had loads of bites, so it's been a thoroughly enjoyable day. And you never know, I might let cameraman Ben choose the venue again if he's lucky, because he's done me proud today. But yeah, on a serious note, I've had a brilliant day. I hope you and guys enjoy it as much as what I have. So I had one sneaky last chuck because we had 20 maggots left, so I thought it'd only be right to have one more chuck, and I can't believe it. Last chuck we hooked a gudgeon, and that is definitely the biggest gudgeon I've ever caught. Beautiful little fish, to be honest. I'm not going to put him in the keep next. I don't want him to get crushed by the roach, so I'm going to plop him back.